Hello, welcome. I'm here with Rick Wemple, and I'm really excited to introduce him to you today and have him share a bit more about his mental performance coaching. Rick has been an amazing coach in the athletic arena and now is shifting into doing personal coaching and mental performance. So I'd love to introduce you today, Rick. He's got an impressive resume and background, but maybe you can just share a little bit about us with us, Rick, about how you are shifting from your personal training focus into more of the mental performance coaching that you're doing now.
Well, I'm going to continue to do the personal training and also the private running coaching. But I noticed about 5 years ago that I was connecting with some of my personal training clients more on a mental, emotional level, where I was picking up cues that they were struggling with certain thought patterns that were holding them back from in certain areas of their lives. And as I started to ask them questions about what do they like about themselves, what are they good at, they started focusing on those things. And as their mindset changed, their performances in various aspects of their lives improved.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, I think this is an area where I could branch my coaching, and it's something I enjoy because I've had some personal experiences myself with how my thinking has affected my performance, whether for good or bad.
Right. That's why
And I want to share this with as many people as possible. And from a selfish standpoint, I see it as an opportunity to coach more remotely so that I can do some more travel and still maintain income.
I love that. And that's why I'm so excited to connect with you. A mutual friend connected us, and it just really aligns with my own coaching too, really focusing on mindset and the power of our mindset on affecting our performance and our outcome, whether that's with nutrition or whether that's with athletics, which is what I know you focus on in your area. I'm so impressed with your background. I know you you went to Yale for biology, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then continued on and got a master's in exercise science. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. And then took that and went back to coach at Ivy League level, correct?
Yeah, I coached for 17 years at 4 different schools, first at Yale University, then Brown University. Then I came out here in 2005 and coached at Lewis University, which is out near Joliet, and then finished my career the last 4.5 years at Loyola University as a cross-country and track and field coach.
So impressive. And just personally, I heard, you mentioned that you ran a 4-minute mile. Is that correct? Or close to 4 minutes?
Close to, an actual mile was 4:04. People say I can officially say I'm a sub 4-minute miler because I ran 3:42 for 1,500 meters.
Wow.
And the conversion on that is 17 seconds. So that would be a 3:59 mile.
I can't even imagine. That's so amazing. So awesome. So tell me a little bit about what you do with your coaching with clients and how you brought in the mental performance aspect to it.
Okay. Well, I've done a lot of reading myself, and I've picked up tidbits from various self-help coaches, mental performance coaches, coaches who work with athletes as well as the general public. And I've kind of taken tidbits that I've learned from all of them and put it into my own format, so to speak. And that's what I was mentioning about 5 years ago. And so I take every client through an initial format that's pretty standard, and it really starts with I want them to identify all the things they like about themselves and all the things they believe they're good at. And then when they start reading through that list, a lot of them are amazed at, number one, how good they feel.
Yeah.
And number two, they're like, oh my gosh, there are a bunch of things on here that I don't give myself credit for on a regular basis. And so from there, we focus on, let's use this list on a regular basis and see what that does to our mindset and ultimately what it does to our performance. And I've seen people's relationships get better with significant others. I've seen athletes improve their performances. I've seen individuals just improve their career situations. because they were thinking better about themselves.
Mm. So it's really becomes a whole life effect, not
Abs-
just, yeah. So it's
yeah,
not
it's
affected.
not just the athletes. It's any area of life.
Yeah. And I can definitely relate to that and have, I call it my badass list. Accomplishments that just feel like you just stand taller. You feel like just grateful too that you've had those experiences to move through, and that they kind of fuel future contributions that you can have towards my own life and to the lives of others.
Absolutely.
Do you have any personal stories of your own?
I do, and I think probably the most important one is, well, there's two. One is career related and one is relationship related, and they're a little bit intertwined. Um, I'm adopted, and I've always said I'm adopted, but there's another side or another message of that, and that I was given up for adoption.
Mm.
And I didn't really see that effect when in the early parts of my life, but when I can look back, I realized that I was using dating as a way to fill up a hole, an
Mm-hmm.
emptiness inside.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, as a result of that, not wanting to lose a relationship, I would start to change who I was, compromise my values, my interests, and things like that, because I didn't want to lose the other person, and I didn't want to have that hole ripped out of me.
Mm.
And what I found is after I started working with this affirmation list, and some people don't like, I love your badass statements comment. Other people prefer belief statements.
A little nicer.
So as I worked with my own affirmation list, which was only started about 8 years ago in my early 40s,
Mm-hmm.
I can look back and about a year later, I started feeling a sense of fullness inside of me,
Mm.
like that emptiness, that hole that I had been experiencing wasn't there anymore. And lo and behold, at about the same time, I'm reading about adoption, and I'm seeing that almost all adoptees describe having this primal wound or this hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really basic psychology that there's a relationship that baby, even in the womb, is developing with the mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so being taken away or given up by that mother is a traumatic experience. Well, as I'm using this affirmation list, I notice a year later that wound or that emptiness is healing and getting filled in.
Mm-hmm.
And I start to date differently.
Mm.
And I start to date where I have better boundaries about myself.
Mm-hmm.
When it becomes apparent that it's not the right person, and whether I initiated the breakup or she initiated the breakup, we go our separate ways, and I don't feel like something was ripped out of me. I still feel like there's a sense of wholeness to me. I'm certainly disappointed and sad, but I still feel good about myself. And I think that ultimately allowed me to meet my wife or be ready for my wife
Mm-hmm.
when she contacted me, which she lived in China at the time. And so there were challenges there in terms of distance, 12 to 13 hour time frame, the visiting each other, and also going through immigration and doing all that stuff in a proper way. I could see where if she had been putting pressure on me to do immigration in an illegal way, and it was prior to me being 40 years old, I might have caved and
Mm.
said, yeah, okay, you can overstay a tourist visa.
Mm-hmm.
But I was confident that I wanted to do the immigration stuff the proper way so that I didn't have any doubts, any hesitations.
Right.
And what I found is after dating her, getting to know her, and not morphing myself to be someone who I thought she might want me to be, I realized she loved me for who I am.
Mm.
And so I had a lot of confidence to propose to her, because I hadn't changed who I was. I continued to be me and be true to myself. And I think the only way I was able to do that is because I was already full inside. I
Mm-hmm.
had nurtured stuff that was already in me. And I saw her as a compliment to my life, not someone who was filling up an emptiness.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. And so
Thanks.
I see why you probably want to include more travel in your.
Yes, that's one of it. Now, before I met her, I had this desire for travel. I've always thought, oh, it'd be cool to live in the Tuscany countryside of Italy for a month. Or I love World War II history, so maybe to take a tour across Northern Europe to
Mhm.
kind of trace the steps of the Allies. And uh, if I want to take even a week off as a self-employed person, I'm not only spending the cost for the trip, I'm also losing the income
Mhm.
for that particular week. And so I'm not going to take more than 10 days off at a time. But if I start to build this business, I'm going to be able to do that and still coach people from wherever I am in the world.
Yeah.
And yes, now with my wife, China, I would like to go there for more than a week because you've got such a long flight there and back, and adjusting to the time zones. It'd be nice to have more than a week to really fully enjoy her family, her friends, and the country, which
Yeah.
is just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story, that powerful story of just how you use your affirmations to really create that transformation in your life. I'm curious, what other tools or methods do you have in the mental performance coaching that you use besides the affirmation list? Could you, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of
Um,
secrets?
I don't. The interesting thing is that is really the heart and the basis of it. Um, a lot of it from there starts to get really individualized with each client. Uh, and it's a matter of what are their goals. So we're going to work on identifying what are the goals or the dreams that they have. And I think that's something that most people do want to work on, but maybe haven't really spelled out. So we get really intentional about and specific about that. And then we try to identify what are the steps, the small steps. They don't have to be huge steps. And I guess that's another mental part of it. We break the big dream
Mm,
down into these small, manageable steps that mentally are a lot less intimidating.
mm,
And then we work on those small steps one after one after one. And it's
mm.
amazing what happens after a month, 3 months, 12 months of doing those little steps, and they add up and they add up. And all of a sudden, here's this big performance or this big dream realized.
Yeah, that I love that. Like, well, just psychologically, it feels so much more attainable to make it into smaller steps, and then it just creates that consistent, similar to exercise. If you're consistent, it builds. You
It definitely
improve.
builds.
But if you're inconsistent with bigger actions, it might not actually build as well as being consistent with those smaller things, like you're saying. So that's really cool. And getting that clarity, like you mentioned on the goal, right? Like sometimes I find that for my clients too, it's just sort of like sometimes they think that they're failing all the time with their goals, but maybe their goal isn't aligned with what their values are. And it's just like they need to adjust the goal to not be failing them. And then they end up not failing at the goals because they have a clear why behind what they're doing. So that's
Yes.
so cool.
And so to further answer your question, one of the things I have them do is sit in quiet and just kind of listen. What's coming up for you as far as internal dialogue, things that are important to you that are coming from within. And it's amazing if they're willing to do that on a regular basis, meaning maybe 5 or 10 minutes, 5 out of 7 days. I don't think that it has to be every single day. If they do it regularly for a significant period of time, let's say 2 weeks to a month, it is amazing the ideas that come out of a person, and then the confidence as they start to see, well, I do have this dream and I do have this ability. And if I do work on this, just, a small step, it's going to materialize. So I think the meditation or the listening to oneself is really important. And then just physically writing it out. And sometimes just having them write out, just let it flow. Just write whatever you want to write in terms of what are your dreams, your goals, your talents, those types of things. And it's amazing what comes from that as well.
I like how you called it just like quietly listening to themselves and letting it flow out. Because I think sometimes, I don't know if you found this with your clients, sometimes there's some resistance to say meditation. And
yes.
Oh, I can't meditate, or I tried that, it doesn't work. And there's a lot of pushback. So have you experienced that, and how have you worked around it with
So you're absolutely right. I purposely did not use the word meditation when I answered that, the early parts of that answer. I've had a few people struggle where they just have trouble getting in touch with what's going on inside. And for those individuals, it does take longer. And I encourage them to just do it in little bits. And it might require some, what do you want to call it? Prompting questions, where if I ask them a question, what's a dream that you have? That might just help them start to focus on those thoughts rather than all the other thoughts that have been distracting them of what they need to do job-wise, what they need to do family-wise, school-wise. And then their mind is able to calm down a little bit more because they've got to focus because of that question.
That's nice.
But it does. I have had individuals where it takes a lot longer for them to get into that quiet space. And I'm talking about they might need to try it one day and they're just totally distracted. And then they try it again another day and they're still distracted. And it might be a few weeks before they start to have that quietness where they can start hearing what's going on inside.
Yeah. And I think that's where it's helpful to have a coach, like you said, to have them have questions to focus, but also to let them know it's normal to have that sort of distraction, that pushback, and that not be immediately easy. It's just like trying to write with your left hand. If you're right-handed, it's not going to come. It's going to look really bad, maybe at first, and awkward, and just take longer, but just keep at it. One other tool, part of the tool that you mentioned, it reminds me of one that I love is it's Morning Pages from The Artist's Way, which is a book to help unblock creativity by Julia Cameron. And it's similar, where you just write without any filter and you just let the words flow out. So I love that technique of just like letting it out onto paper. And then when you see it written out, it's so helpful to reaffirm those dreams or that direction that you're trying to take with your life, to see it. It's like manifesting it on paper.
Yes. And that you talk about the visual, seeing it. In addition to the writing it, I think those two things give a power physically in our neural systems that reinforce or help the learning and help the confidence. And I talk about athletics, where we perform our best when we're actually in a calm, relaxed state. And when our bodies are in a calm, relaxed state. And I'm losing my train of thought here. What I've found is that when athletes are thinking positively about what they can accomplish, they are relaxed and they perform really well. And when they are thinking, oh, I got to do this, I have to set this new personal best or else I'm a failure, they put this pressure on themselves, their bodies get tight and tense. There's plenty of data from neuroscience and MRIs and other brain scan imaging that there is a physical basis for our thoughts, that certain areas of our brain light up based on what kind of things we're thinking. And so it's not just this ethereal thing going on up in our head. It is a physical, chemical, biological thing that's going on in our nervous system, which ultimately is going to affect our muscles and our tendons and our movement, and consequently action. If you're not an athlete, are we going to start to take different actions in our lives, like I took in terms of how I dated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you've kind of mentioned this, but it sounds like you kind of started with athletes, but now is this work applicable to everyone? Is it for non-athletes as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I gave you my own personal example of the dating life and marriage. I also have a career example from my own life, but I've got examples from other people's lives as well. So this applies to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about all aspects of performance. And I generally put it into about three categories.
Mm-hmm.
It's our relationship performance, it's our work performance, it's our health and wellness performance.
Yeah. Do you have any, maybe some examples from your clients of how they maybe shifted their wellness and the health aspects of their using this mental training?
I
Real life
do.
examples are always so helpful to put it in.
um, I I have a woman who initially her son, her middle school son, was a running client of mine. But over the first 3 or 4 months of meeting with him, which was also meeting her, I got to know her a bit. And one day I asked her a question about where she went to college.
Mm-hmm.
And she'll tell you today that that question just made her freeze for a second because she hadn't finished college.
Oh.
And then she eventually answered me, and I could tell that there was a certain aura of less than or not good enough in her answer. And I just said to her, well, why can't you finish college now?
Mm.
And I'll take credit for asking that question, but I think the more important credit is that she internalized that and started to think, I can finish college now. I
Mm.
can do this as a 44, 45-year-old adult.
Mm-hmm.
She made that conscious decision within about a week of us having that conversation.
Mm.
Not only did she go back to college, but with her decision, without anybody else knowing, her boss takes her to lunch about 3 weeks later and says, I see a lot of potential in you, and I really think that if you worked on and finished a college degree, you could move up in this. She was working as an IT person in a hospital group, and her boss was saying, I think if you finished college and got a degree,
Mm-hmm.
you could move up and be even more successful.
Mm-hmm.
So all she did was make a decision or believe,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can finish college right now.
Right.
And after making that decision, it's almost as if she was emanating and radiating out this energy to other people, come support me in this. And her boss was an example of that, without the boss ever being told I'm going back to college.
Yeah, like he wasn't in on it, but he saw it. That's
and
amazing.
so she did finish her degree. Her boss mentored her more and also gave her quite a few learning opportunities in terms of conferences and seminars
Mm-hmm.
that were specific to the job,
Mm-hmm.
where she could grow and educate herself in addition to what she was doing in terms of finishing her college degree.
Wow.
And that was 2014. She finished her degree, I think it was May of 2017. So, and it just, I could see the confidence level in her shift when she made that realization. Yes, I can finish college.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's
And
so
it has led to other good things in her life.
right. It's just having that shift in her thought, maybe her thinking pattern, of like subconscious thought that she was having, like you said, of feeling less than. It's like you gave her a different like different thoughts to be thinking, which shifted her beliefs.
Correct.
Not just
Absolutely.
that's cool, so cool. What about somebody who's really on the, like feel like they already got a good base? They're like, oh yeah, I've got the mindset piece really solid. What do you like? Do you have any clients that you've worked with that are pretty kind of far along maybe in their mindset journey? And that you've still seen some transformation for them?
Yes, because we all can improve, and we, me too.
Yeah.
Even today, I feel like I am a relatively confident individual, but there are some times when I default to the negative. And so, and I've worked with some clients who, like you described, overall, they have some pretty good confidence. They have been very successful in marriage, in family rearing, in career. Um, but there are times when they just need to be reminded, yes, I do have this good quality. Yes, I do have this talent. I have this gift. This is likable about me.
Mm-hmm.
Just being reminded that every once in a while helps them just elevate their performance in those areas just a tiny bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And so really in that sense, I'm, I guess for lack of a better analogy, I'm the dentist who, you have good teeth. I'm helping you keep the good teeth by having that proactive approach to the healthy teeth.
Yeah. Or just, yeah, like you said, reminding people when we forget. I forget. And you get caught up because then you just sort of like lose track of those core beliefs that you really, that fuel your positive actions. And it's just like you need to reconnect to that. So that's really cool.
Correct.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit and ask you a couple questions maybe about like do you have a personal like morning routine or routines that you do kind of on a daily basis that help you tap into some of these techniques that you use with your clients as well?
I'm going to acknowledge that I do not. I roll out of bed about anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes before my first client.
Start early too, I guess.
Well, I do. I somewhat early. 7 o'clock is my first client. It used to be I had some 6 o'clock and 6:30 a.m. clients, and as they eventually dropped off, I did not replace those
Right.
with new clients. Um, so yes, I want to stay in bed for as long as I can. But to answer your question, I do have some things that I do. Most recently, I did this online quest that was put together by a company called mindvalley.com.
Mm.
And specifically, the instructor was a woman by the name of Marissa Peer, Peer. And it was a 35-day quest where it talked about changing our mindsets, um, looking towards abundance, and she had some really good meditation, whatever you want to call them, hypnotherapy, reprogramming type of tapes. And she encouraged us to listen to those on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how uplifting those were. And it was, 15 to 18 minutes
Mm-hmm.
where maybe I'd listen to that. Maybe I have an hour break between clients. So now I'd sit in the car and just be quiet and listen to that audio. And it's amazing what 5 days in a row, 10 days in a row, 15 days in a row that did to elevate my belief in myself, but also my belief that I deserve abundance in love, abundance in finance, abundance in success, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and um, I've seen some of my actions change as a result too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so what I try to do, I can't say that I have this routine that I do every day for years and years and years. What I try to do is be coached by different people in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
so that I'm reminded from different perspectives. It's usually the same message.
Right.
Believing in myself, changing my mindset, but I get it from a different person, and it might be for a couple of months with one person and then a couple of months with another.
Right. It's like filling up your toolbox and having a lot of different things you can pull from, and just the focus those continually learning and investing in yourself.
Correct.
Into that investment.
Yes.
So I love that. It's like just we're right now in my coaching group, we're doing anchor actions. And so something every day that's a positive action that snowballs into other positive actions, and having sort of a go-to list of what those might be, but then pulling out different ones day to day, just because the reality, especially this time of year, we're traveling, it's holidays, you might not always be able to go to the gym and get your workout in, which is usually an anchor action, but maybe you can do something else like a walk outside. So anyway, just swapping in, I love that. And you're just flexible and trying different things. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Nice. And then you had mentioned some people that you've used in your own training of yourself, and like people you've read, a lot of books that you've read. Do you have one or two books or people to recommend that others could maybe follow up on and look into?
I certainly do. One of them is called SCORE, and it's spelled out as an acronym, so it's S period, C period, and so on. And it's by an author by the name of Jim Fannin. His last name is spelled Fannin, and Jim is actually a Chicago area native. Actually, I shouldn't say native. He's a Chicago area guy. He grew up in Kentucky, I think. But his book, the SCORE, stands for self-discipline, confidence, optimism, relaxation, and enjoyment. And he uses that as the basis for us building these skills that identify goals, identify areas in our lives that we want to be better, breaking down the tasks that help us be better. And I have a great example from using his method. One of the things it said is, who are you and what are the areas that you want to be good at? Do you want to be a good son? Do you want to be a good husband? Do you want to be a good brother? Do you want to be a good coach? All those things. And I have to admit, I don't, prior to about a year ago, I didn't talk with my sister that much. We're kind of different. And after I started putting these things down and saying, yeah, I am a brother, and I can make efforts to text or call more often, I noticed that I started caring more about my sister's welfare and started texting and calling her more often. And it's improved our relationship. And I think it's because I was following Jim's plan and being intentional to say, this is an area of my life that needs improvement. And because I identified it as an area that needed improvement, I started to just naturally take action. And so his book is one I highly recommend. Man, I've got a ton others.
That's a great one. If there are any other, do you have any podcasts that you listen to?
Yes. One that I listen to is, I'm trying to think of the name because he changed it. The Charged Life, I think, was the initial name, and now it's just called The Brendan Show.
Okay.
Brendan Burchard. His first name is spelled with an O-N at the end. Yeah. And then his last name is Burchard. He has, again, it's these same messages. Identify what's great in you, affirm them, grow them, be intentional, be specific. And most of his podcasts are in the 10 to 15 minute range. So it's not like you're spending an hour listening to the message. And so I really appreciate that, because I'm not into somebody just gab. I just want to get to the point. What's the message?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, I know who you're talking about. I think he wrote The Millionaire Messenger.
Yes, exactly.
It was a really cool transformation story when he was almost killed in a car accident, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And his personal journey and entrepreneurial journey is very impressive.
It's very impressive.
Well, I'm just curious, how can people reach you? And do you work with clients outside of Chicago? It sounds like you are shifting more into virtual coaching as well. I
am. So probably the easiest way to remember to reach me is my website, which is Coach Rick. That's the easy part to remember. .info, and I point out that the .com wasn't available, so I thought .info was kind of the closest
Yeah.
that would make sense. So I think if anybody goes to coachrick.info, you're going to see my phone number there. You're going to see my email address. You're also going to see links to an online course that I put together. I also do small group workshops. And as you said, I do work with people outside of Chicago. Like I currently have a couple of sisters, they're middle school sisters, basketball players that I'm working with in South Carolina, and a high school boy in Texas. So I am working with some people that are outside Chicago.
And that's awesome that you work with youth as well, because I know that there's a lot of the women I work with are moms, and they have children that are athletes. So this might be something that would be helpful for their kids too. So
yeah, and I want to emphasize that again, it's not just athletes. I gave those couple of examples of people that I'm working with outside of Chicago, but my intent is that I'll be working with people outside of Chicago who are just looking to improve the general aspect of their lives as well.
Yeah. Well, it's so nice to talk to you, Rick. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your expertise with us. And I really feel aligned with what your vision and mission is with working with clients to improve their lives. Not, obviously I start with health and fitness, and then expands really into how can we improve our whole lives. And then from there, feel good to help others and show up in our lives as our best
Yes,
self.
it does.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Hopefully we can connect in Chicago sometime soon.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.